Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Welcome to week one of the 100% Cricket Leading the Game series. Today we will be talking 100% leadership. I'd now like to hand over to our host for today, Mel Jones.
Welcome to everyone right around the world, whether it's morning, afternoon or evening, and also for those that potentially are watching this at a more convenient time later down the timeline. My work office is usually a cricket ground somewhere around the world, but for now, over the last month or so, my office is my home. So I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional grounds of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. My last day of work, well, it was just a small little game on March 8 at the MCG. Just a few butterflies that day, but I must admit today I had those butterflies all over again because I have been watching webinars and the like and all this online world, and the pressure to have the perfect backdrop is actually just stressing me greatly. So I'm very proud to say that over my left shoulder is an Ash Gardner original. Yes, I got her to paint this for me, her Indigenous art that represented the Women's World Cup final. So in the middle is the MCG and also reflecting International Women's Day. All the white dots represent the 86,174 people that attended on that day. And the yellow and blue dots represent all the women that played within the Indian and Australian teams in the lead up to that game, who have been such an important and integral part of the game. They have been our leaders, and that's why I think it's almost a perfect topic to begin with, all things leadership for 100% cricket. And our guests are absolutely at the top of their game. So it's absolutely brilliant that we've got some magnificent people in administration joining us today. Broad range of experiences and networks. And I think that's also probably reflected in the audience that we have here today as well. So our guests for this webinar, ECB Managing Director of Women's Cricket, Clare Connor, from World Rugby, Katie Sadleir, the General Manager of Women's Rugby, are both here with us. We're going to catch up with them just a little bit later on, but we're going to kickstart things with a gentleman who's been in this job for just 12 months. And usually you say he's just getting his feet under the desk. I don't think his feet or he's sat down for the last 12 months in any way, shape or form. ICC Chief Executive Manu Sawhney is joining us. He's just the 5th Chief Executive of the ICC, joining in April of last year. And in that very short space of time has overseen 3 record-breaking ICC events, secured a groundbreaking partnership with Facebook, and is now leading an organisation into the future with women's cricket and women in cricket at the forefront of his mind. Manu, absolutely wonderful to have you join us.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for a very kind introduction. And I wish I could get as inspiring a backdrop as you had.
Look, I've got a couple of connections. I'll see what I can do for you. Look, as I mentioned, you've been in this post just a little over a year now, and your support for the women's game has been evident right throughout that time. I want to start with a fairly broad question, but I suppose very pivotal to this entire series, and that's why? Why is women's cricket and women involved in the game at all levels so important to you, and more importantly, important for cricket?
Sure, Mel. Before I answer your question, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining in the webinar. I'm given to understand that we have people from 54 countries, and it just means a lot to us in cricket that we have such a breadth in terms of geographies from where people are passionate about the sport. I also wanted to wish and hope that everyone and their families are keeping well and staying safe in a difficult time. I'm right now based out of Singapore for the last 8 weeks, where unfortunately we are currently going through a 3rd wave. And I just hope that other people are being cautious and staying safe. I also just wanted to thank Clare Connor and Katie for being the guests and helping us on that. And Mel, generally, thank you for taking charge of this particular session. In terms of your question, why women's cricket resonates so much with me personally, I generally think the simple answer is because it's the right thing to do. Both from a cricketing perspective, I mean, if you look at it from a cricketing perspective, I think cricket truly has the potential to be the leader as far as gender balance growth is concerned. And nothing will be greater than inspiring, men, women, children to be all part of the sport. And this has not been really reflected in the past. So I think we have a great opportunity moving forward to kind of carry on with the work that we've done. Our research that we have done so far clearly tells us that there is a great opportunity for fans to engage with women's cricket. Since 2017, we as a sport have invested in the women's cricket as far as the global platform is concerned. We took the first decision to basically televise each and every game in the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup in 2017, and then have followed up by raising the prize money significantly, and more importantly, or equally importantly, also invest in the digital coverage, which gave us just absolutely phenomenal results in the recently concluded T20 World Cup in Australia. I will not forget the day when we had 86,174 fans, as you said, in the stadium. It was absolutely surreal. And to then have on top of that more than 1 billion video views on the digital platforms, to me, just showcase the amount of opportunity that we have as a sport to really lead from the front.
The sport's obviously changed so much in just the space of 2.5 months since that ICC T20 Women's World Cup. I do want to take you back to that moment just for a brief point in time. What were your memories of it? Did you have your and was your mind spinning towards all the possibilities of where the game could go, or did you just have your fan hat on where you were just caught up purely in the drama and the hype and the entertainment along with everyone sitting there?
Lovely question. As I think back, the 3 words that come to my mind is historic, inspiring, and successful. And I remember walking from Cricket Australia's office where I was having a meeting towards the stadium. And just walking to the stadium, you could feel the buzz and the energy. And you kind of had a sense that something special was going to happen, right? There was just this energy out, and it was just a moment in time where your mind said, this is going to be a special day and an evening today. Before that, prior to that, the levels of engagement that we had been having in the tournament had been, exceptional. We were seeing a lot of interaction happening from a ratings perspective, and our digital numbers were showcasing that a lot of people were getting more and more interested as the tournament was progressing. But, there was just excellence, right, in terms of drama, great crowds, and I think more importantly, even the demographic of the crowds. You had young children, you had families there. And to us, that was a big moment, right? And the atmosphere in the stadium was just quite extraordinary. And Australia showed their class, right? I remember going down at the prize distribution ceremony, and Belinda Clark was with me. And I said, Belinda, how do you feel? She says, Manu, I want to cry, but I can't cry because I still cannot believe, standing here, that I'm seeing this, right? So it was just fantastic. And I mean, you look at the quality of cricket, right? You had Alyssa Haley hitting 75 of 39 balls, 5 sixes, 50 of 30 deliveries, fastest half century scored in an ICC Cricket Limited Overs competition period, men's or women. And to us, that kind of showcased that this was an inflection point, a watershed moment in terms of where we were reaching on the sport. And then to top that all, having the final say of the Australian team celebrating with Katy Perry, I think just gave a different connect altogether. And I think to me, even the fact that, 1 billion fans, to just give you a perspective, in the last Cricket World Cup in 2017, we had 100 million viewers, 1 billion video views. From there, we went to 1 billion. The FIFA World Cup Women's Final, which is considered as a benchmark, in terms of digital engagement, had 473 million views. So I think we truly have a lot to be proud of as a sport, and the path that we are charting moving forward.
There's a line in quite an iconic women in sport movie called League of Their Own, in which Tom Hanks says there's no crying in baseball. Well, I can tell you there's crying in cricket. So I think Belinda Clark probably had a little bit of a tear. I was a blubbering mess for most of the day as well. So it's okay to cry at moments like that. Cricket Australia and the local organising committee made a pretty big call for this T20 World Cup to separate the men's and the women's, so the women's could have a standalone. So I guess the big question is, do you believe that the women's game has become a financially sustainable and a competition and a platform where it can stand on its own 2 feet commercially?
When you one of the most telling things, which I actually also titled my email the next day to the board, the title was "How's that the day women rule the sporting world?" And that was the headlines that was there in the Australian newspaper. I don't think so anybody could have said that more appropriately. So in the long run, absolutely. I don't think so it's going to happen overnight, but the path that we are taking, the momentum and the traction that we are seeing, I am absolutely certain that we are on a path of a sustainable sport, which will be able to sustain, and not just sustain, but even thrive on itself as a commercial proposition. I was sharing with Claire during the ceremony prior that you had Billie Jean King, who basically talked about the $1 contract, right? The first contract for the women's tennis was $1, but it was a contract, right? It finally kind of made a leap into saying we will stand on our own. And I've said this the first day I joined this organization. And I genuinely hope that by the time I leave, it's much bigger than a $1 contract, and women cricket can stand on its own, and proudly so.
Every cricket organisation is now doing their best to deal with COVID-19, the immediate impacts that are happening now, and also where they're going to sort of relaunch and reset themselves for the future as well. How does post-COVID-19, how does the cricket world look to you?
Look, I think I wish we all had a crystal ball. I think the discussion right now with everybody is what is going to be the new normal, right? And how is that new normal is going to be translated in itself. Fundamentally, I have a lot of belief in the human species in itself in terms of the amount of innovation that it's been able to do. So I think, right now the focus for us clearly is how do we get out of this pandemic in a much more stronger position that we've been, and how do we basically leverage on all the opportunities that we think exist. I think in terms of digital transformation, that is one of the key pillars that we are looking at in trying to make sure that how do we use this time of lull to make sure that our systems, our processes, our infrastructure that we require is in place as soon as it's time to basically move on. We've spent a considerable amount of time on the back to cricket plans and protocols as to how do we ensure that, at the community level, at a domestic level, at an international level, the protocols that we've shared with all our members are actually safe and for everyone involved. And because health and safety to us, for all our stakeholders, is an absolute key priority. And then we are trying to kind of work through with all our members to see how do we basically work through a calendar and how do we create an opportunities where we can get back in a much stronger position.
Okay, so that's cricket as a holistic and a broader sense. Let's narrow it down a little bit to women's cricket specifically. And are we looking at a different future for the game post-COVID?
Yeah, I think we are looking at a future where we want to basically use the digital platform to create greater fan engagement. We want to make sure that people across the globe have an opportunity to engage with them. Focus on the events. As you would have heard, that even in the event structure that we are looking from 2023 onwards, we basically made a big move of now saying that the number of women's events will be the same as men's events. They will follow equitably that structure. And even at an under 19 level, we will have an under 19s Women World Cup every alternate year. So from our perspective, I think not just now, but moving forward, we've already clearly made a statement that this is something that we deeply believe in. We think that there is a great opportunity. And as far as cricket is concerned, we want to play a leading role in global women's sport.
Manu, I think a lot of people would probably agree with me to say that you've probably got one of the most exciting jobs in world sport at the moment. I certainly hope that cricket can be a leader globally. I know Katie Sadleir, who's going to come on in a minute, probably will have something to say against that because she's probably wanting rugby to be that sport in itself. The three words that you did mention, though, it is historic, inspiring and successful. That was the Women's World Cup back then. I think hopefully that is the overlay for women's cricket coming out of COVID-19. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Mel, and thank you, everybody.
Wonderful to have Manu Sawhney joining us with us as well. Now, I believe we have the results of the live poll, and we're just going to share this with you now as well. Now, the question was one word that describes women's cricket in your country. And as you can see from the screen at the moment, voting has closed. So if you've just got a perfect word, you're just a little bit too late. The bigger the word, the more votes that actual word had, and the biggest one is growing. And I think that's probably reflective of the people that are tuning in here today. When I looked at the countries that they were representing, I was expecting to see, and I did, quite a few numbers from Australia and England and India, but it was fantastic to see people from Antigua to Austria to Denmark to Indonesia to Ghana and right across the spectrum. So fantastic to see that growing is smack bang right in the middle there, and everyone is right behind the development of the game as well. Now that we've had that poll, I'm going to have another one later on in the show as well, so please stay tuned for that one. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our next two guests. Both are visionaries within their field of sports and administration. Clare Connor is the Managing Director of Women's Cricket at the ECB, a trailblazer of the women's game globally as the ICC Women's Committee Chair, and nationally also by leading the transformation of women's cricket in England and Wales. Clare also captained England for over 6 years, winning the Ashes in a... Winning the Ashes? Hang on, that's not my script. I'm not talking about England winning... No, this is that. Forget about results. Let's just welcome Clare. Clare, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mel.
And then also joining with Clare as well, we have a special guest who is outside the cricket bubble. Katie Sadleir is the General Manager of Women's Rugby at World Rugby. In 2017, World Rugby launched their Women's Rugby Strategic Plan with the ambition to be the global leader for women's sport. Manu will have a little bit to say about that later on. Katie also was at the helm of New Zealand's high-performance sports system, where she helped take the country. Now, just get this, a population of just 4 million people in New Zealand, from 4 Olympic gold medals at the Sydney Games to 18 at the Rio Games, so knows all things about high performance. And another female elite athlete herself, an Olympian competing at the LA Games in '94 in synchronised swimming. I thought I had the most diverse background going around in women's cricket or women's sport, but no. Katie, born in Scotland to Scottish and Australian parents, moved to Canada, then to New Zealand, now finds herself in Dublin, and this explains why I couldn't pick your accent, Katie.
Yeah, people call me a bit of a bitzer. Commonwealth kid, though, I have to sort of say when you look at the connections, but thanks very much. It's really great to join you guys this morning.
Right, all things leadership, and I'm actually wanting to start with your own sporting careers to begin with. Lots of research has been done of late about the links between women succeeding in business and in their professional careers, having had some sort of contact point within the sporting arena. Clare, I'll start with you. How much of being an athlete, a cricketer, do you think prepared you for your current role?
Well, thanks for the introduction, Mel. And it's thanks to everyone for joining. I think we've heard some great opening remarks there from Manu about his commitment to the women's game, so that's good. I think a lot of my experience as a player stood me in good stead for the leadership role I'm in now. I think the main thing was that I made lots of mistakes when I think back. And there were lots of things I didn't know then, certainly when I started playing international sport, but then being a leader, you know, I captained my county side for 15 years, captained England for 6 years, and the amount that I learned during that time was huge. And you kind of wish you could have known it at the beginning, so that you didn't make mistakes and have some of the trials and tribulations along the way. But as we know, and as we know more than ever right now, that's not life and how it works. But I certainly learned about collaboration. I learned about respecting people's differences. I think when I was a young athlete and a young leader, I was captain of England when I was made captain, I think at 22 or 23. And, you know, I knew nothing then really about diversity and respecting people's differences. I thought everyone should be the same. Everyone should react to things like I did. And of course, that's not human nature or humankind. So I think I learned a lot about respecting people's differences along the way, and that it's that diversity that makes teams strong, and gives you different perspectives and different innovation solutions to problems. But yeah, I mean, I've had a completely blessed career. You know, I've been a teacher as well, taught English literature, which was my other passion other than cricket. Combined teaching English with playing cricket for England, and now find myself in an amazing role, surrounded by a brilliant team, and you know, with amazing momentum behind women's cricket. So all those transitions, I think, have stood me in good stead. Yeah, but still learning.
Katie, I'm going to ask you exactly the same question, but I'm one of those people that watch the Olympics and then becomes an expert within 30 seconds of watching a new sport. So when I watch synchronized swimming, I just see this amazing smile when you know that the body is under complete stress and strain on every single level. Is that one of the elements that you've learned, that when you're in a board meeting or you're speaking with people that are just doing your head in, that you can still smile nicely and go, right, I've got to get around this in some way, shape or form?
Yeah, and hold your breath.
Hold your breath. Breath or tongue?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit like Claire. I mean, you know, my background, you know, it's interesting when you're the general manager of women's rugby for the world, people assume that you've played rugby. So unlike like Claire's amazing cricket experience, I haven't played, but I come from a country, New Zealand, that clearly does. But yeah, so my background is very much aquatic sports, and I think I was a competitive swimmer, I was a synchronized swimmer, and I was also a water polo player. So I sort of dabbled in everything except for platform diving, but you never know. There's always next year. Yeah, I learned a lot of things when I was really young. You know, particularly in swimming and the aquatic world, really time intensive in terms of your training. So time management at a really young age, when you were training 35 hours a week and you were trying to fit in school and life and friendships as a young person, was really important. Strategy, planning. You know, I've always been someone, you know, it's funny, I was just actually talking to my daughter this morning about her career and goal setting, and I was reflecting on the fact that all my life, you know, I've always had a vision of where I wanted to be, and that came from working with great coaches, being part of great teams, you know, breaking it down from the big picture vision to understanding what that means in terms of now and next year. So that whole kind of milestones planning. And then I think, you know, as Claire said, you gotta, particularly when you're in team sports, everyone's different, and you try to make sure that you get on as much as possible most of the times, but actually understanding how you become a critical part of a high performing team and what that means, you know, relationship management, you know, competitor analysis, all those kind of things that when you look at what great chief executives are demonstrating now, it's definitely comes from my sporting background.
Another one for you both, as you're from an athlete background and then the transition into administration. I know we've got a number of current players that are listening into the webinar today who might have thoughts about doing the same sort of thing. There's a phrase called imposter syndrome that's been spoken about quite a bit, particularly in and around the context of women moving into senior roles, and women not feeling as if they have the skill set, I guess, to take on a role, a position or projects or strategies and the like. When you both first got into administration, what helped in that transition to give you the confidence to be able to back yourself completely in a new field? And I'll start with you, Claire.
Yeah, I think think it's a brilliant question, and quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, there is a very, very sharp learning curve, I think. And fortunately, because I'd played sport and I had worked, you know, I'd had an 8-year career as a teacher. I guess I'd built up some resilience and the ability to kind of go and ask for help. And I think those were really important things at the time. But I didn't know what I was doing. It was a new role at the time when I started at the ECB. It hadn't existed. It had kind of existed before, but in a very different guise. So it was a new role. And I remember my first week really vividly in January, and going up to London. I live on the south coast, so I made the trip to London my first day. And by lunchtime, a few people said to me, "Oh, you weren't in the leadership team meeting this morning." And I said, "Well, no, that's because nobody told me I was on the leadership team." So that was, you know, not only was I having to get used to a very new world and a new role, but other people also needed to remember to communicate as well. So, you know, you learn on the job a lot. You have to ask lots of questions, I think. And, you know, it is, I think, making any transition like that is difficult. But, you know, I think you have to, you know, for those people listening who are, you know, you mentioned, Mel, players, athletes listening, I think you do have to remember why you've got a job like that. You know, someone has put their faith in you. You've had some success along the way, whether it's in a different sphere or whatever, and therefore, you know, you have got the skills in there somewhere. You might not be immediately clear that you have, and yeah, I guess it's that sort of that balance between having the sort of the humility and so on to go and ask for help, but also knowing that you're there for a reason and that you're there to do a job, and you can make a difference.
Which also goes into, if people read Brené Brown, is about embracing the vulnerability too, to actually put yourself out there and say that you need to ask questions at different stages. Katie, is that a similar sort of storyline to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you never stop learning. And I mean, I know when I transitioned, I was really young. So I went on to the board of New Zealand Swimming, I think when I was kind of mid-20s. And so I was at that stage kind of challenged with both the fact that I was the only woman on the board, but I was also pretty young in terms of a person on a national governing body. I think that the tip for me was, you know, a bit like what Claire said, you get the right people around you to support you in your career at an early age. You know, you develop that kind of network of people who will look out for you. You know, we talk about mentoring, we talk about having sponsors or personal sponsors that are there that you can, you know, just run things by as you get yourself into sort of high intense sort of situations, to check maybe before you actually get into those meetings, to get the kind of really good grounding on things. So the transition was really quick for me, but all the way through, when I think of, you know, I don't think I was actually, when I look at myself now as a general manager of women's rugby at World Rugby, I tend to smile because I don't think I ever was really planning to have a career in sport. That was going to be my volunteer thing. So very much I was going to be the volunteer administrator. I was going to manage teams, get involved in the world of aquatics as a volunteer, chef de mission, that kind of stuff. And I kind of fell into the paid stuff. But it has been such a fascinating, many years of experience. But it's the good people that you wrap around you. And sometimes they're people that are your mentors and sponsors. And sometimes they're the people that you lead, that just keep you in check. I mean, I quite often do what I call a blind spot exercise, which I'm sure everyone does. You know, the things that you don't know about yourself that other people know about you, but you really need to find out quickly, so that you can make sure that you address those as you're involved in leading other people.
I've promised myself and Holly that I'll stay on track and on script for this webinar. So there's about 4 or 5 different things both of you have brought up there. So I'm hoping people are jotting all these things down, and we can certainly ask them in the question and answer time as we get towards the back end of the hour. I want to drill down a little bit more specifically into the strategic plans that both you have been heavily involved in over the last little bit of time. For the ECB, the Transforming Women and Girls Cricket, and for World Rugby, accelerating the global development of women in rugby. Both have really similar pillars, and I think a lot of people who've been involved in this process will probably sort of nod along as I mentioned them, but participation, pathways, high performance and elite programs, the sort of combination of people and leadership and governance, both on and off the field, and then the profile of the sport through all the various platforms as well. I'll start with you, Katie. If people were looking at a strategic plan, what's your advice on the structure and the vision about it? You mentioned before you sort of fell into your role. You have to have a little bit more clarity in and around a strategic plan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm one of those planning geeks. You know, there's a few of us around that just love planning, and I guess that was back to my career as an athlete. But I think that the important thing about strategic planning, and I've been involved in so many different sports in terms of strategies, is it's actually, the plan is really important, but the process that you go through to develop the plan is so much more important. I mean, establishing that buy-in, making sure that you understand who your stakeholders and your key influences are, is absolutely critical. Now, our plan, and congratulations, Claire, on your plan. Our plan is a one-pager. So there is nothing behind that in terms of, it creates a strategic framework over an 8-year period that gives sort of a bit of a transformational change agenda for World Rugby, for regional and union organizations as well. But my role really is very much to set that kind of strategic framework. The pillars are the pillars, and as you said, most international federations and national governing bodies would have the same, but it is about ensuring that the accountability is right across the globe and across within the organization to actually deliver the objectives in that plan.
And so I'll switch to you here, Claire, because it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think probably 10 years ago, no one was ever really thinking about strategic plans for women in sport specifically. And now all of a sudden it's become almost the buzz thing in a lot of ways. I want to drill down into your mindset when you're trying to develop a strategic plan, because is it different if you're sitting down and if I'm someone in clubland or to a state, county, provincial level, to a national body, to a world body? Do you think that there's any differences in the approach, or can you see some really strong similarities?
I think the approach is very similar. I think the important thing when you're building those plans and consulting with those various stakeholder groups is that they can see themselves in the work that's developing. And I think, you know, the similarities between our action plan and Katie, your plan, you know, Mel, as you've outlined, are, you know, they're very obvious, and probably for any sport that's looking to grow, you know, you're looking to, you know, try to spread your investment and your attention across the areas of growth. And for us, you know, that's a bottom to top plan. You know, we've probably spent the last 5 years really investing at the very elite end, and now we've got the opportunity and the level of investment to be much broader and to really bring schools and clubs and volunteers and our pathway at, you know, county age group level from under 13s upwards into that plan. So I don't think the approach is that different. I think it's about taking everybody along that journey to create the plan with you. We did a huge amount of consultation. My team and I spent days and days on the road, on trains and in the car, getting out into the country and to meeting with various groups, focus groups, county boards, and so on. You know, to really bring them into the process. And I think Katie's spot on. You know, what you end up with really, based on your level of investment, is going to be fairly formulaic, I think, in sport, because all of those pillars matter and you want them to join up, and you want the player, most importantly in sport, to be able to see that path ahead of them and how they can take the steps, if they want to, onto the next stages. But the process was absolutely key. It was a lot of consultation, you know, pretty much 18 months to 2 years worth. And I think what's your point, Mel, there about, you know, sports weren't writing strategies 10 years ago really at all, and they certainly weren't writing them for women's sport. And I think as we enter the post-COVID world, whatever that is, we have to remember and remain really faithful to why we've written these plans. And that's going to be the leadership challenge, I think, as we move forward. You know, what do we believe in? Well, we believe in growth, and we believe in sport for all, and we believe in everyone having an equal opportunity across those pillars on Katie's plan for World Rugby or within our plan. And we must remain loyal to those principles and beliefs, I think, and that'll be the real challenge as money gets squeezed, jobs get squeezed. Is the real leadership challenge for sport is going to be how steadfast we want to be to why we wrote those plans in the first place. How did we build that momentum over the last 10 years that's led to the investment that Manu referenced, that's led to a crowd of nearly 90,000 at the MCG, or whatever it is in our respective sports? What built that momentum, and how determined are we moving forward to protect those plans and that investment? And that's the real, I don't know if Katie, that's similar for you, but for me, that's the real excitement and the challenge right at this present time is that, I think, and how we, you know, Manu mentioned that women's cricket or women's rugby, they can be gender balanced growth areas, which in turn will become commercially sustainable. So we have to fight to protect that and protect all the work that's gone into our various strategies and plans.
Katie, you've been nodding along there right throughout Claire's little bit. It obviously resonates greatly with you. I suppose to add to that question as well, I'd also like to get your thoughts on how do you keep that strategic plan alive in the forefront of people's minds, particularly when there is so much else going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I am so fortunate about when I took on this role is that there was such passion that from so many people, men mostly, who were driving the woman in rugby agenda. So, you know, when you've got a chairman like Sir Bill Beaumont, who kind of has it as one of his key platforms in his manifesto for the recent election, we have a really unusual situation, which I think is absolutely fantastic, where we have a women's advisory committee, which is part of our subcommittees for World Rugby. It is a diverse subcommittee, so it's made up of 4 men and 4 women. The men that are on that committee are the president, the vice president, the chief executive of World Rugby, and the chair of that committee happens to be the vice president of the French Rugby Union, Serge Simon. So when you have that level of decision making and passion and commitment, the stuff that's discussed actually gets done. It's real. So World Rugby, you know, when the plan got up and running, I mean, I spent quite a lot of time looking at the 5 pillars that we had, and realized that one of the real key things that we needed to move on with quickly was the leadership pillar, and how do we actually really embrace the necessary diversity that needs to be in place. And the first thing that we did was we changed our governance structure to add 17 women directors onto the board onto the council, which is our highest decision-making body. So with a decision like that, to launch the plan, have all of a sudden from 0 to 35% women, and have a really strong women's advisory committee with a passionate chairman, it bodes well for the future in terms of keeping it front of mind.
I think we've probably seen across most sports is we have this cohort of amazing men that are, as you mentioned, really passionate about developing the game. I know here in Australia we have a group called the Male Champions of Change, so that a lot of the CEOs of the major sports, and they come together frequently to oversee and to chat about how to broaden the base of women within their sport, but also looking at ways of shifting the governance structure and the like. That's absolutely wonderful, and we need them involved in the journey. I suppose the question next to you guys is the ones that aren't on the journey as yet. There's still a few people out there, men and women, who are resistant to change, and I guess just changing the perceptions that people have about both sports or women in sport in particular. How do you? It's a tough one to do, because that's it's been involved for many decades, hundreds of years along the way. How can we break some of those perceptions to open up people's eyes to just the beauty of women playing and being involved in women's sport? Claire?
Brilliant question, Mel. And if we knew the kind of the definitive answer to that, we'd be making progress more quickly. But look, I think people, the problem, if you like, or the challenge in front of us that you've outlined is the same. People are resistant to change. Lots of people, not all, but lots of people are. And so I think, one of the things I've learned definitely is picking those people off and trying to find the way in. So for some, it'll be some you'll need to talk altruistically. Some you'll need to talk about their own family, Some, particularly if you're talking to some men who are a little resistant to change. I think, for some, you have to talk about the business case. And why would you offer your sport and only tailor your sport and make it accessible and attractive to 50% of the population? That's not a good business model. And so I think trying to work out where the problems lie and what the different perception problems are is really important. And I think that's, that takes time to really grapple with that and to find the ways in with those people. But again, I come back to, this, particularly with where we are now, there's going to be a reset, I think, of lots of different walks of life. And, sport, if it wasn't powerful before, I think everybody is missing it terribly at the moment. And it has got such a powerful quality to it, to unite people. And, we've been really lucky, I suppose, at the ECB with our, right now, our strapline for our strategy that we launched at the start of this year called Inspiring Generations. Our purpose is to connect communities and improve lives. And women's cricket particularly, but cricket more broadly, if we do remain true to that, then I think we can take everybody on that journey, because we all know from our various experiences in life what cricket has done for us or sport has done for us. And anyone working in sport or volunteering in sport has got those experiences which are personal to them. And so to keep true to that purpose of connecting communities and improving lives, I think, it is going to be really important for particularly for women's cricket as we navigate our way through the next however many months, and taking some of those and taking people with us who don't necessarily see, who might not see the value in it at the moment. So yeah, it's a rambling answer. I think it's a really good question. Ultimately it will be changing the culture of sport, changing the culture of women's cricket or women's rugby or whatever, that in turn alters the economy of those sports. So changing culture, changing perceptions and attitudes is really vital.
We're going to add a 7th series onto this 100% cricket called Rambling, and it will be hosted by Clare Connor. You do it beautifully. I love it. Katie, in terms of perception, and I'm sort of fast tracking a little bit here, mindful of time. I think one of the big ones we often speak about female athletes playing a male-dominated game and perceptions in and around that. But let's take that into another realm in terms of female coaches as well. I know World Rugby's done a magnificent job in trying to open up pathways and people's ideas about women, not just coaching women, but coaching in the men's competitions as well.
Yeah, we launched actually last week. It's one of the good things that you can do in this period of time is get people ready for when they can play again, and get people using this downtime to really think about where they're really at in terms of their people side. So we did launch a resource called Women Coaching Rugby. And the ultimate aim of that is about, if you really believe in diversity and you believe the power of diversity in boards and in organizations, then you must also believe that diversity in coaching teams is important. So it is about getting more women involved in coaching, but coaching teams of men and men's rugby and women's rugby. So quite a lot of challenges there. We know that our look into what's been going on in most sports in terms of coaching development is that we've had a lot of interventions that have been focused very much on the individual. So let's fix the woman coach and then things will be better. But we do know that it's actually not about those individual interventions. It's about the culture inside the organization, and it's about society. And so this resource particularly looks at addressing some of those barriers. But I might have just actually put it to link to your Claire's amazing campaign and the link to the community is we also launched a global marketing campaign last year called Try and Stop Us, Start Rugby, Become Unstoppable. And it was deliberately disruptive, and we're now kind of moving into year 2 of it to actually kind of front on talk about some of those challenges that exist for women on and off the field and start bringing out those stories to get people talking about them.
Right, you two, you have these magnificent strategic plans for both sports, you have them in play, and then an event like COVID-19 comes along and just disrupts things so much. Lots of talking around the impact to that's going to happen on women's sports specifically. Over the last number of years, increased viewership within women's sport, increased sponsorship, participation. It's probably been one of the largest growth areas for sports as well, yet at the moment we're starting to hear that it's probably going to be the first area that's going to get cut as well financially. So here's your 30-second elevator pitch almost to say what is worth protecting and cherishing most post-COVID-19 within each of your sports, Claire?
30 seconds doesn't allow for the rambling answers.
I know, right? I'm learning quickly.
I think I've said it already, which is let's remember why sport has galvanised pre-COVID-19 to really back women's sport. What do we believe in? What future do we want for sport? Women's sport essentially has been discriminated against. That sounds strong, but it's true, for decades in terms of investment, exposure, infrastructure. The last 10 years, sports have decided to change that, some at a faster pace than others. And we were moving pre-COVID in a really exciting direction. And whilst the commercial and financial realities will be tough, we should remain true to the vision of the sports that we want to be. We want to be gender balanced. I'm speaking for Katie and me, I suppose, in terms of our respective sports. And we want our sports to be for everyone. We want them to be inclusive and diverse and thriving. And women's sport, women's cricket, women's rugby is fundamental to that future.
Katie, I'll give you the same. What needs protecting or cherishing? Or you can choose what needs absolutely dismantling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're very same as Claire. We have a strategy. We're in the third year, just starting the third year of an 8-year strategy. We believe in that strategy. We got a huge buy-in to that strategy at a global level and a union level. So backing that and believing that we did the right thing and we went through the right process, it makes sense. But, you know, COVID also has presented some opportunities for us. I mean, that sounds kind of a bit of a weird thing, but, you know, I talk quite often about the fact that now, and it's probably never ever happened again, is that in 2021, we have this huge platform for women's rugby. We're participating in our 2 pinnacle events. We've got the Olympics for our Sevens program. We've got the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand, 7 weeks apart. What an amazing opportunity. You know, we're obviously sharing New Zealand with cricket, which we're really looking forward to in terms of our 2 World Cups. But, you know, you don't get that opportunity again. It'll be, I talk about it being the golden era of year of women's rugby.
That's fantastic. We're only a couple of minutes over. We're going to open it up now to everyone that is sitting back and thoroughly enjoying, as I certainly am, the conversations with the two of you. So if you are out there and you do have a question, there was a couple of questions that I've missed out on in amongst all that. And that's sort of along the lines of the commercial streams as well. So if that's a question you'd like to ask or anything of our fantastic leaders, please pop your name down and even the country that you're from as well, so that we know who we're talking to. And we will try and get through as many questions as we possibly can over the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. And I've got to make sure that I've actually got the questions on my screen as well. Okay. And this one from John, and all the way, and I did mention that we've got a wide spectrum of countries, so my eyes naturally gravitated to Uganda, where we're currently having a 46-54 ratio of women to men participation, but a happy to network with other countries in improving women's cricket further. He's also the operations manager there, and he can be reached on, that's info@ugandacricket.com. So not really a question, but fantastic to see that there are people out there opening up their worlds to new people. And I might just, before the next question comes up, the collaborative approach between cricket and rugby in this instance, but the collaborative approach from women in sport in particular, I think has been one of the massive drivers for both as we go forward. So I'd get either of you to comment on that as we wait for the next question to come through.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, hats off to Holly for getting this up and growing. I mean, I meet weekly now with Holly from the ICC and from Soraya Berryman, who's got a similar role in FIFA. And we're good friends. We talk about the future. We talk about the challenges. We talk about how we can fast learn from each other. So constantly connecting with other sports.
We do have a couple of questions coming through there. This one is anonymous. With some other major global sporting bodies making public statements of support for its investment in their women's sport. Will we see the ICC doing something like that for women's cricket? Now, we don't have anyone officially here from the ICC, so let's just drill it down a little bit. Claire, from your side, I know there was a massive investment, $20 million for this strategic plan, and you look to have, I think it was 40 domestic contracts. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID, that's just shifted a little bit. Do you still feel as if it's the right way forward as a leader at the top of the leading women's cricket, that you have to come forward and make a statement over the financial investment?
Well, it's a question I've been asked a lot over the last few weeks, and I did an interview this morning with BBC Radio 4, and they asked it's a well-trodden question, which is, are you ring fencing? You know, is that 20 million that the ECB has approved for the next, or secure for the next 2 years, are you ring fencing it? Because, and I think it's a question that any leader or CEO would find almost impossible to say yes to right now, because the uncertainty of the future. You know, the ECB could face losses of £100 million this year. You know, we risk our entire summer being lost, or we could lose 400 million, somewhere between 100 million and 400 million. So to be able to ring fence or guarantee anything right now across the game, men's, women's, club, county, school strategy, women's and girls strategy, I think would be kind of foolhardy, because you know, until you really know what your losses are, it's a very difficult one to answer. What we have said, and I've said it publicly, and Tom Harrison, our chief exec, has said it publicly, is that what we will guarantee is our commitment to our strategy and to what we want to be, and to the various activities that are outlined and the objectives that are outlined within the strategy. And the timelines will probably have to adjust, whether it's around those 40 domestic contracts or another part of the strategy. Timelines will probably have to adjust, and the quantums may have to adjust too. But the ECB remains resolute in its commitment to that plan. And I think that's really the only kind of ring fencing guarantee or promise that we can make right now.
Katie, I'm going to direct this one to you. It's from Sedler from South Africa, and apologies if I've pronounced your name incorrectly. And I'm directing it to you because one of the pillars in your strategy, which was quite different to the ECB, was strategic, sustainable investment and partners. So we're specifically talking commercial here. And the question is, it's been a challenge for corporates to associate themselves with women's sport, and slowly but surely this is changing. The COVID pandemic is a threat for that, and it's real for women's sport from a sponsorship perspective. What can the leaders do to ensure that women's sport is still a viable option for the future?
Yeah. Well, we are in a, we've spent quite a bit of time having a look at developing a woman in rugby specific commercial strategy. So we made the call at the end of last year to unbundle. So, you know, to have a look at, rather looking at our major properties, to have a separate commercial strategy which addresses the rights associated with women's rugby. We're working with a really great company, TRM, in the UK, that did this work for UEFA. And I know that the FA has done a lot of work in terms of having a separate commercial strategy as well. So we're very new in this journey, in that we are in market now. And although that, you know, we clearly have had feedback from many of the partners that we're approaching that they need some time because of the situation that's out there, that they need to actually sort of pause and reflect. But we've also had some really strong interest in terms of being associated with a woman's part of the game. And so hopefully we'll be in a sort of situation to be announced some things later on in the year. So that's really exciting. So it is a challenge, but unbundling, we believe, was the right thing to do for World Rugby. And we're out there in the market now looking to have some strong partners globally to actually support us on what we're trying to achieve.
There we go. And cricket, of course, will get a commission because we've just given you a wonderful platform to talk about partnering with rugby. Claire, I know you've got to. Claire, I know you've got to scoot. We really do appreciate your time. If there is, for those young women out there that are potential leaders in the future, just give us a couple of words that you think that sums up some important attributes.
God, Mel.
I know, I've just put you on the spot.
Crikey. Always ask for help. Back yourself. Take all of the learnings, if you've come from sport, about resilience and success and failure, and that kind of bounce back ability thing. And yeah, and look, it's an exciting time to be a woman in the workplace, in sport particularly right now. Opportunities are opening up, and find your way through that door, and lean into that situation, to quote Sheryl Sandberg, and give it your best shot.
And if I can say, just take a second, because Claire, I thought, was going to struggle, and then she just took a second and then delivered quite beautifully a number of things to go forward with. Claire, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mel.
We'll catch you soon, Katie. I've still got you for just a couple of minutes anyways. I do want to ask you just one quick question, because it is relevant to cricket. Rugby itself has two different formats. You've got the 15s and the 7s, both with its own unique intrinsic beauty of both games. Cricket's got 3 formats to deal with. Have you had to deal with developing both at the same time, or is it a sense of investing and looking more at one than the other at different phases?
Yeah, no, it's actually even more than that. I mean, I think when I went to my first regional General Assembly, it was in Mongolia, and I was talking about the strategy that we were developing, and I was exposed to snow rugby of women. So we deal with beach, snow, 7s, 15s, 10s, 5s, a whole range of different formats of the game. And I think that's really quite unique in terms of the sport, because what it does is it allows you to be culturally appropriate. That when I look at getting the sport up and running around the world, we've got 127 member unions. Some focus on 7s, some focus on 15s, and then many others, like I was spending some time with some of the people in the Caribbean. They're really focused on their 10s. So great to have that opportunity to be able to have all sorts of different formats of the game, so that you can really be a sport for all.
Perfect answer to finish with. Thank you so much, Katie. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm probably going to hound you now offline about a variety of different other things as well. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for sending through your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get through them all. I know we do have one final poll for you, so I will be handing back to Holly, who has all the details. Please stay safe, look after each other, and the better we can do that, the quicker we can move to physically getting back and playing, and to advancing the game even more. Thank you so much.